As you can see there, the drivers just starting to prepare themselves. The second set of drivers for qualifying session B for the DRS62s. The time that they achieve in this qualifying session will give them a grid slot, give them the best possible position to start the races later on. So the first heat for the DRS62s is scheduled around about 11:20, so an hour or so is time, and then heat B, the second set of drivers, follows that around 25 to 12. What we've also got this weekend is we have the Federation Cup returns. It was missing at Fulbeck, but it's back this weekend, so the drivers who don't make the cut, if you like, the top 24 or so drivers that don't make the cut into the main Grand Prix final, they'll take part in what is known as the Federation Cup. For those who are followers of national karting in the UK, sometimes known as a B final, sometimes known as a repechage. But the difference is that drivers do not qualify from the front of the repechage, the front of the Federation Cup, onto the back of the grand final. What they do get is they get the opportunity to carry some championship points with them. So it's still not all lost. There's championship points at stake. There's also trophies and prizes at stake for the Federation Cup as well. But in a shift to tradition, does not guarantee a place onto the back of the main Grand Prix final, which is where the big points are at stake, the big prizes are at stake, and that's what these drivers will have very much a focus on this weekend. So here is the second group then of DRS62 drivers. They were led out by Sherry-Ann Powell. So Sherry-Ann, who was very competitive at Fulbeck a few weekends ago in the wet conditions. It was changeable really, wasn't it? We've had the last two rounds, round 5 at Rowley, round 6 at Fulbeck, which were ended very wet, but we had certainly a good challenge on our hands for the drivers, the mechanics, the parents, the helpers and supporters. There was lots of tyre changing going on as the weather swung from dry to intermediate to wet. But it looks today as if we're going to have a completely dry day. No rain forecast so far. So let's have a look then and turn our attention to this group of drivers then. So we've got some drivers in here in this second qualifying session that we'd certainly expect to be competitive in terms of lap time. We'd certainly expect to be towards the sharp end, and that includes the likes of Jamie Scott, the number 9. It includes the likes of the 104 of Finlay Watson. So Watson's second in the championship. There he is, young man from Dover, 11 years old. And at the moment, in the early stages of this qualifying session, he's third fastest because it is Sherry-Ann Powell, the number 76, the rookie driver. And then Daniel Sabula is second fastest, then Watson, then Archie Pitts-Drake, another driver who's shown good pace in previous rounds. Certainly since he joined the series at round 4. Archie Pitts-Drake shown good pace. And there, Jamie Scott, the number 9, he's just around a second slower than Sherry-Ann Powell. Now let's do some comparison work then. So just around a flat 51, a 50.957 was Aidan Hassan's fastest lap time. So if we look at that in comparison to now, Sherry-Ann Powell, she's got to find about half a second, 4 tenths or so. And then Finlay Watson's about 7 tenths slower than Aidan Hassan. So Hassan, who will have now completed his post-race checks, he'll be now having a little look at this, just seeing what these lap times are, just scoping out the competition, as will the rest of the drivers who were in the qualifying session A, as the 105 of Max Horler moves up into second place. So Sherry-Ann Powell is still fastest out there at the moment, the 76. The 9 of Jamie Scott completes another lap. Does he go faster this time? He's a second slower than Sherry-Ann Powell at the moment. Sabula goes faster, or as fast as he's been so far, 51.545 for Daniel Sabula. And then Horler and Watson and Pitts, Drake and Scott. They're the top 6 at the moment. A further second back to the 24 of Freddie Cox, who's currently in 7th place. And there is Sherry-Ann Powell, who crosses the line to start another lap here. Not gone any faster last time round. In fact, it was a half a second slower last time from Sherry-Ann Powell. A gaggle of karts down this long back straight, including Daniel Sabula. And there's the 111 of Eddie Stewart, currently 13th in the session so far. And Watson does his fastest lap of the race so far, and Sabula has gone fastest then. 51.383 for Daniel Sabula, who's the fastest man on circuit at the moment, but that's still 0.3 of a second slower than Aiden Hassan from the first qualifying session. Into Raymond's comes Sherry-Ann Powell, 9 years old, second fastest at the moment, and she does her, well, it's not her fastest lap so far. She's got 0.08 of a second to make up this time now to Daniel Sabula, and another 0.3 or so to get on terms with Aiden Hassan, who is looking like the fastest of the DRS62 drivers here in the dry conditions so far. Remember, can all change when it comes to the cut and thrust of the heats, when these drivers start to jostle for position. So here is Sherry-Ann Powell, the number 76, down the long back straight, the pink helmet with the green flashes over start finish. Does Powell go faster this time in the clear air? No, 51.7 for Sherry-Ann Powell. Horler has gone faster though, 51.6 for Max Horler, still in 3rd place, and then Finley Watson and Archie Pitts Drake and Jamie Scott. 7th now is the 127 of Harry Bartle, and then Freddie Cox, and then the 106 of Aaron Mensah. As the drivers start to look for a little bit of clean air if they can possibly find it, or even better, they look for a little bit of a target, somebody in front to tour them around this Llandow circuit, somebody to really get after, and always, generally, always quicker to chase than it is to be out in completely clear air. It doesn't work in the same way as Formula One cars. There's not the downforce here to prevent, or to create a dirty air. Won't travel quite at that speed, so usually when they're tucked behind, that's a good thing in one of these DRS62 karts. They will want to try and latch onto the back of each other and get them to pull them round this Llandow circuit. We've got 2.5 minutes, a quarter of the distance left in this qualifying session. It's still Daniel Sabula at 51.383 with the fastest lap of the session so far. There he is, the rookie driver, young man from Hampton, 10 years old. At the moment, he is the fastest in this second qualifying session for the DRS62s. Aiden Hassan fastest in the first qualifying session, some 0.3 quicker than Sabula has gone so far. So they are going to need to find a little bit more pace, these drivers, or can they turn it into some race pace? Sabula and Powell, he's neat and tidy, isn't he? Daniel Sabula, he's just about to come on to a group including Jamie Scott as well. And the 107, 9th place of Ollie Morrish. Now he might get a little decent tour here. He might just be able to use these two to get him a little bit closer, although I think he's about to get onto the back of Morrish. Probably not in the area that he wants to either, and Morrish goes wide as they go through the complex, and that will probably be hurting Sabula. 51.362. He now tries to go to the inside and does find a way down the inside into Chandler's. It's more of a flick of a right-hander, Chandler's. It's not really a hairpin. It opens up on the exit. Reminds me a little bit of the corner that used to take you onto the back straight at Lark Hall. Those who know their UK kart circuits, the little double apex right at the bottom of Lark Hall brings you onto the long back straight. It's like the double apex without the first apex. A little bit more open, a little bit wider. But certainly the bottom end of this circuit almost mimics some of that complexity. We're into the last 30 seconds here. Sabula, Powell and Haller. They've been pretty much as you were for the last 5 minutes or so, really, haven't they? Sabula's gone a little bit quicker, a couple of hundredths of a second, and he's now trying to squabble his way through traffic that includes the 92 of Ewan Scott, who's 13th at the moment. So this will do Sabula no good at all. He's probably not going to go any faster in the remainder of this session, as Scott shuts the door on him as well as they go through the Dell. And that is session complete then. So the ones that are on their final lap now have one last chance. Has Sherry-Ann Powell got anything left? Freddie Cox has gone a little bit quicker. 51.9 for him. Takes him up to 5th place. I'm just keeping an eye on Sherry-Ann Powell, who's just coming round Raymond's now and about to cross the line. Does Powell go faster? No. 51.9 for Sherry-Ann Powell. So it's as you were then for her. 2nd place in the session. Max Haller, a further 1/10 of a second back in 3rd. Finley Watson just about to come through now and complete his session. Can he go any faster? The number 104 in 4th place. No, he doesn't. And they are all as you were. So Daniel Sabula completes the session with the fastest lap of 51.3, which is some 0.3 of a second slower than in Hassan. So Hassan will be aware that he will start from the front row of the grid in the first qualifying session, first heats rather, for the DRS62 drivers. Those heats A and B, the grid will be split between the 2 races. It'll be a 11:20 start for heat A, 11:35 start for heat B. But now, for the first time this weekend, we can get our first look at our junior drivers, our middle group, if you like. Drivers between the age of 11 and 16 years. The DRS 100 kart is faster, has more of a power to rate ratio than the DRS 62 kart. Remember, it's all standardized stuff, so the engines, the drivers, the engines, the chassis, the fuel, everything is very much the same. So the emphasis is completely then on driver ability. It's the first time we see those DRS 100 drivers just getting themselves prepared. Remember, we've got 2 qualifying sessions for these drivers as well. So the full field is split between qualifying A and qualifying B. So again, we'll keep an eye on the times from the first session and just see where they compare between the 2 of them. 10:35, so we've got 2 or 3 minutes then before we'll be back with the first qualifying session for the DRS 100s.